it's in that state of openness, of willingness to learn something else, that, really amazing things can happen. And if I would have stayed Christian, I never would have experienced that, because as a Christian, I had all the answers. I didn't need to ask any more questions.
Welcome to Voices of Deconversion. We share the inspirational stories of deconversion told by former Christians who are now atheist or agnostic. Our stories remind us we're in it together. They encourage us as we discover who we are and help us to embrace who we become. Now here's Steve with today's guest.
Welcome back for episode 57. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with the author of the book titled Firing God. She was raised in a southern Louisiana home in the heart of the South, and as she explains, her family was chock full of deacons and ministers, and she attended church 6 days a week. So this was a very, very dedicated and devout Christian. As things start to become difficult for her later in life, she finds herself, walking into her home one day, going through a divorce, foreclosure, and bills are everywhere. And this story really stuck out to me because it begins with her giving God one last chance, one opportunity here, and her pastor gives her a book, and she's reading through the book, and it begins with that, I'm going to give this God thing one more go, and by the end of the story, she's telling God to F off. So there's some interesting stuff that she reads in that book that I thought was pretty significant, and it's a great story. But there's another story she talks about hiding in her room and listening to Christopher Hitchens debates on the internet, and I found that to be hilarious. At the end of the episode, she explains a little bit more in detail what she means by firing God and why that title for her book is actually there's a lot more behind it. And I actually found it to be really powerful. I really liked it. I hadn't heard anything, in all the interviews I've done, I've never heard someone talk about it in that way. And I loved it. I felt like it gave a lot of insight into the experience of someone deconverting, and specifically into her experience and how powerful it was for her to be able to fire God. So definitely check out her book, Firing God, which you can find on Amazon. You can also go to her website, CherylAbram.com, and the links to the book and to her website will be in the show notes. So you can check out her site. She has some other books that she's written as well, but Firing God's the main book, as she says. So definitely give those things a look. And here is my interview with Cheryl Abram. All right, well, I'd like to welcome Cheryl Abram to the podcast today. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Yeah. Well, do you consider yourself an atheist or agnostic, or is there another term that you'd prefer if you were, identifying yourself as far as religious beliefs go?
Not really. I tend to tell people that I'm a Christian who changed her mind.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. And then, so tell me a little bit about your childhood then. How did Christianity influence it?
Christianity was so influential, like I didn't even know that there was a world without it. I grew up in southern Louisiana. My family is chock full of ministers and deacons and ushers, and the church was an enormous part of everything. From the time I was very little, and I would literally go to church 6 days a week, and I enjoyed it. I liked it. My friends were there. I knew a lot of people there. We had fun. I got to wear new clothes on Easter and Christmas and the other holidays. It was very much embedded into everyday life. And like I said, I didn't know that I had no concept of being able to live without that belief.
Yeah, it was just part of the culture around you or your family or everything. Yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
Was there a time in your life as you grew older that you began to, I guess you could say that your faith matured, or that you began to take it more seriously, like as a young adult, or?
Yeah, there was. So because I grew up in it, and everyone around me was, embedded in it, I didn't really, like, everything I knew and believed was like from osmosis. It wasn't from experience. It's because somebody told me I should. That's the reason why I did that. So when I went
Yeah.
off to the military when I was 18, I went to the military so I can get, money for school and just get away from home because there was no way I was going to leave home otherwise, I thought. That, and I was on my own. That's when I really started to delve into those things for myself, you know, and, I felt like I had to be more responsible as far as going to church on my own, not having someone tell me, and really finding out who God really, really was.
Yeah. And so that happened when you went to the military. So what kinds of things were happening in your life that what led up to that, I guess? What do you think was the thing that kind of was the springboard for you to start having your faith develop more?
I started suffering.
Hmm.
Like I at 12 years old, 8 years old, 9, 10, I didn't really know what suffering was. I mean, people were there to help me and stuff. So when I got out on my own, it wasn't as easy. I was in
Yeah.
a relationship. I had a boyfriend. I got pregnant. We had an apartment, and I started having problems. And here I am. I'm a chosen. I'm saved, and I'm chosen by God, and I'm supposed to be special, but I'm suffering just like any old devil out there. And I didn't know. I figured it's because I wasn't mature, and I had to do more and be a better Christian in order to live a better life.
And so did you try then to become a better Christian? And what things did you try to do to make yourself that way?
I tried everything. I mean, I found a church. I fasted. Like, I stopped eating. I remember one time I was going through so many things that I was like, okay, I just have to let everything go. I didn't eat for like 10 days, fasting and praying for the Lord to intervene in my life. And just started hanging around church people, reading my Bible, looking at videos on TV, TD Jakes, all this. I mean, everything. I just inundated myself with the Lord, and
Mm-hmm.
on my knees all the time. And, I really tried to be better, a good Christian, someone that God would be proud of.
Was there anyone in particular that you feel like influenced your faith the most, maybe in those years?
It would have to be my family, like my oldest sister, um, my mom, because
Yeah.
they loved the Lord too, so I would lean on them a lot, to help me know what to do, to pray with me, so that I can make it through all the things that I was going through.
And you said that you were starting to struggle, and that's kind of what started these maybe these doubts or these questions that you were having. How long were you able to kind of keep up the I just need to be a better Christian routine, and how long were you able to kind of do that?
I was able to do that. So my first marriage ended and I got married again. And it was in the second marriage, right, where things were no better than they were, way back when, where I started to, I wouldn't say doubt. I started to get tired. I'd been doing so many things that I thought was the right thing to do, and nothing, there was really no material change in my life. It just, if anything, it got worse, so, and blaming the devil and going to God. I mean, that stuff was getting exhausting. I got tired.
It was like
Is really what it was.
it was like the same old answer to every single question. It was
Every single question.
go to
Yes.
God, excuse me,
Mhm.
go to God, blame the devil,
Yes.
be a better Christian. So it was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
just the same response. And it sounds like at that point in your life, you were kind of starting to feel like this isn't working anymore.
This isn't working, and I'm tired.
Yeah.
Like, Steve, I was exhausted. Like, serious, like,
Yeah.
physically, I'm not physically and mentally just exhausted. If I had to say one more prayer, look up another verse. I was so tired, you know.
How'd you get out of that then? Being in that state, that can be really difficult.
hmm Well, what happened was I had come home and I was in the middle of a divorce. My house was being foreclosed. I went in my kitchen. There were bills all over the place that I knew I had no way of paying, and I did not know what to do. And I had made one last attempt to go the God route, and I found this new church, and the minister gave me a book to read. So I sat in my room, I sat on my bed, and I picked up the book, hoping I would read something that would, give me hope again, and pull me out of whatever this was that I was in. So I started reading the book. I don't remember what book it was, but I remember in the book, the author said something about, you have to get things like Stephen King books out of your house. You have to do things to purify the environment that you're in. And when I read that, I got so angry because here I was once again, hopeless and helpless, going to the most powerful being in the universe. And I'm being told, Cheryl, you're not good enough yet. You're not doing enough yet. Yet you're still not getting it right. It was like white hot fury. And at that moment, all I had left, Steve, was the truth. That was it. I had to just tell the truth. That was all I had left in my toolbox. So I was like, you know what? God, so I'm talking to God at this moment. And I said, I'm sick of this. I said, I don't love you. I never loved you. I only served you because I thought I had to. And, I'm just saying all this. I'm being completely honest. I've always felt this way, but never said it because I couldn't. You can't say those kinds of things.
Right.
And finally I was like, you know what? You can fuck off. And I fully expected to be, some lightning to come through the window and strike me down. Like I really did. But I was at the point where I didn't care. I didn't care because I was going to tell the truth, because that was all I had left was to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, when I did that, it felt like I had, like chains were, like I had been in chains, but I didn't know it, and I just felt so light and free once I told the truth.
It's like the release that you needed to have.
That is absolutely what I needed to have. I mean, and it was so amazing and it was surprising because I did not expect that at all. It was very surprising. And from there, all of these questions just started bubbling up, and that's when the real hard work began, and simple questions like Bible stories, like why are there two stories of Adam and Eve in the Bible? Like what does that mean? And like questions about things that I'd been taught just started bubbling up. So I started researching. I started looking and really seriously asking questions about this God that I had been serving all these years.
Would you still have considered yourself a Christian at that point?
At that point, I did.
Yeah.
At that point, I did. But
you were just in the middle of the kind of just being so upset and so frustrated with everything. Yeah. And so then this starts the journey of kind of discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, it did.
So you start discovering like the two creation stories and some different things. What else stood out to you about that time, or what else were you discovering that comes to mind that you think was significant?
Like things like, why are there no women authors in the Bible? Like why was God so violent, like in order the killing of children and stuff like that, when he's a loving God and stuff. So I started reading other books that people had written. I remember this one book I read, When Good Things Happen to Bad People. No, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Mm-hmm. By I think Rabbi Kushner, right? And because his son was sick and stuff, and he wrote that. So I read that book, and then like a few more and I started listening to the guy. He would debate people. He was wonderful. Hitchens, Christopher Hitchens.
Oh yeah, okay.
I started listening to his debates, and I have to tell you, I I would hide, like I would, it's crazy. In my own house, like I would go into a room and turn the volume down really low, and because I didn't want anybody to hear that I was listening to Christopher Hitchens, because I shouldn't have been, listening to that. So things like that, right? I started doing things that I had never ever done before, asking questions I had never ever asked before.
Who else was in the house that you were afraid would hear?
So my nanny, who was very, very religious, and my kids, because I brought them up to, go to church and love the Lord and all this stuff. So, but even when people weren't there, I would still get books and I would hide them.
Like quietly, yeah,
Yeah, I'd
because you
hide
just
them
are
in my
afraid.
closet, or yeah, because I wasn't supposed to be doing what I was doing.
Yeah, that's really funny. I mean, I associate with that because, when you're kind of reading this stuff, it's a little bit
Hmm.
scandalous at first.
Yeah.
I actually had feelings like that when I was at Bible school and I was learning about how some Christians interpreted the Old Testament as more of a metaphor or allegory. And I
Hmm.
was so excited by that because I was at that point really having a hard time with some of the silly stories like talking snakes and donkeys and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And but then like my wife, she was a Christian at the time, and so that made it really awkward because I was learning all these interesting things, but I couldn't really
Yeah.
divulge too much, but I couldn't help it either. I was just like, oh my gosh,
Right.
because you think, oh, I've found this new path. This is going to be the way I can be a Christian now. And so I really associate with those stories of what you're saying, like, listening to
Hmm.
Hitchens at a low volume or, reading a
Yeah.
book kind of in secret.
Right.
It's really funny too, because it's all you're doing is you're just learning. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
well, how long were you successful at hiding kind of your learning from people that were around you that you were trying to keep it from, like your kids and
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like you said, like I came to a point to where I had to tell somebody, like what I was, because I really felt like I was making some discoveries, like I
yeah.
was unearthing things that at least the people that I'd been associating with, like they had no idea what was there because they'd never asked those questions either, as far as I knew. So I called my sister and just my normal circle of people, because my I was still associating with the same people, but I would get that same thing, that's the devil, and just pray about it, and the Lord is on your side. Oh, the same
Yeah.
old stuff. So I soon found that I could not go there, and so I started blogging.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, everything, all the crazy stuff that I was thinking, questions I had, the feelings I had, I just blogged all of that stuff,
Were you
you know.
getting good or bad feedback from anyone, or was it just kind of
It wasn't public.
okay?
It was like a diary for me,
Ah.
Yeah, because I was not ready to, I was not ready to put, because I felt like I was crazy,
Mm-hmm.
because like that was all I knew, and I remember when it finally came to the point to where I just saw that what I had been believing was not true.
Yeah.
You know, the day that I saw that was one of the most memorable, beautiful days that I've ever experienced, up until now. And I was so happy. I was so excited to see that, oh man, we're doing all this stuff, for nothing. I mean, we can do it, that's fine, whatever, but it's not necessary. You know,
Yeah.
I just wanted to tell everybody, and you would think that people would be happy to hear that, you don't have to be so afraid and so, to following all the rules in this book. I mean, you can, but you don't have to do it. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, folks aren't excited to hear that. Uh-uh.
Well, yeah, particularly the religious
Yeah.
people in your life, probably.
No, they weren't excited about that at all, right? So, yeah, but that was a good day, and I remember calling my sister, and I told her, you know what? Because in Christianity you have this thing called backsliding,
Hmm.
where you go out into the world, and then you confess your sins, and you come back into the fold and all that. And I was telling her, I said, I can't Like this is not what this is. I haven't backslidden. And what I felt like was I couldn't, even if I wanted to go back to Christianity, I couldn't because there was nothing there anymore. Like there was nothing to go back to, you know?
Yeah.
So I had to go forward. Like I couldn't. Like, I couldn't be a Christian again, like I was.
What led up to that? Like I know we've talked a little bit about it. You were researching and stuff, but what led up to the moment that you felt like you had to tell? It was your sister.
My sister, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a better way to put it. What was the inspiration for you to tell her? Like what motivated you to say I need to tell somebody?
It was that day, and I don't know. Like I don't know what I did or what I don't know what happened, but to get me to that point. But what I do know is that I was at work that morning, and for whatever reason, I don't know, it just clicked for me. It was just everything just came together, and I just saw like I'm doing all of this for nothing. And it wasn't. I was happy, like I was so excited to see that, and like that's the thing that had me calling her, and and just wanting to tell anybody who would listen to me.
Yeah.
We don't have to do this.
So it must have just been like the accumulation of like all of the stuff that you'd been learning, and it just was like one day it just kind of clicked.
And that's it. And what I think the major component of that is that now I was willing to see something else. It was my willingness to be open, to really say, I don't know what is true. Like, I don't know if this is true or not, but I want to know what's going on, And I think it was just that willingness to be open-minded, right? That just allowed me to really see what's obvious, to tell you the truth. Like, it's not, to really just see what's obvious, and to know that, this book that I've been following, and that's been, I've been going to lead, to live my life, is not true. And I don't have to live my life according to the script in this book. I can live it another way and be happy and grow and learn and, and all that.
Did you feel so a lot of times when we lose something like that, we are looking for, the next thing to kind of take its place, or trying to get our moral feet under us,
Yeah.
Were you going through any of that? Like trying to replace it with something, or not even replace it, but just trying to figure out what your belief system was, what you believed in,
Absolutely. So there were two things that happened, right? When I was excited to see that, what I saw, that, all of this is unnecessary, and, Christianity is not what I thought it was. But at the same time, like a little down the road, I was really sad. Like I was very depressed, because when I saw that, I lost a lot. Like I lost being favored by God. I lost eternal life. I lost like all the stuff that is promised to you as a Christian. That was gone. All of that was gone. Along with the other things. So there was that, but there was also, I wanted to know, okay, so if that isn't it, then what is it? Right? And I started looking again for other things, and I found several things. Like non-duality is one of the things that caught my attention, but but that was kind of weird. Like some stuff in there was resonating with me, but some stuff really was not. But over time, like right now today, I couldn't even tell you what. I really don't follow anything. I don't know. I really don't follow anything.
So you don't have, yeah. Well, I mean, and most of my guests are either atheist or agnostic, or they.
Yeah, but I don't call myself atheist though, because I'm not like. I mean, if you want to believe in God, I don't care. Like, do that. That's your thing. If that's. But all I'm saying is, from what I see, is that none of that is necessary. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Not necessary because of what you discovered about the Bible.
It's not necessary because it's just not. I mean, anything, if it's whatever the religion is, they're
Yeah.
all unnecessary, you know?
So, and I'm sorry if I'm trying to use labels, but I guess I'm using labels to try to understand, like, kind of where
Hmm.
you're at. So, do you consider yourself like secular or just a non-believer, or is there a phrase that you think better encapsulates kind of how you feel? I know you said you're a Christian that changed your mind, but
Yeah.
um, just trying to understand that a little bit better.
So the way I make my decisions right now, I don't go to a deity, you know,
Yeah.
I don't like meditation and all that stuff. Like I don't depend on that stuff to get me to be better.
Yeah.
So I feel like I am exactly who I am right now, and I can become something different if I want to, but it's not in an attempt to be to please something or to get to a higher self
Or
or
to be
all of that
religious.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just me making decisions and living my life like that. That's what it
I
is.
think that's a good answer. It's a way to. I think what I like about that is you're saying I'm focused on my life right now and how
Hmm.
to make it the best I can make it today, and
That's it.
how to live my best life kind of thing, without any concern for any of this religious supernatural stuff. Just living your life.
Exactly, and I don't need reward and punishment to motivate me.
Well, that's good. I like that.
You know,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm motivated by what I'm motivated by in the moment. I mean,
So you named a few things, but what was the hardest thing for you in that process?
after I had that one-on-one conversation in my room where I told God to fuck off, it was almost like rolling downhill. You know, I I was on a trajectory that I don't want to say was uncontrollable, but I just I don't know. It was like rolling downhill. Like the hardest part was, and it wasn't hard because it's like when you get to muscle failure. When you're lifting weights and you get to muscle failure, I don't care how much you want to lift that weight, you can't because your body is telling you it's done. You can't do it, So that's where I was. I couldn't lift that weight. I just couldn't, no matter how much I wanted to.
Yeah.
So it wasn't easy. I don't want to say that, but it was more like I don't know, I was just on a trajectory that just took me, where it took me.
So like with the lifting weight analogy, it's like you were mentioning earlier that you were just tired.
Yeah.
So in that analogy, maybe you set the weight aside and you're done. Is that kind of what you're saying, in a
I
sense?
had no intent, at no time did I say I there was no statement that I made like regarding me not wanting to be a Christian. I never saw my life at all at any point as not being a Christian and believing in God.
Mm-hmm.
Never, you know? So me getting to that point was not like a deliberate attempt to get to that point.
Right.
It was just where I ended up, after all asking these questions and doing these things, I just ended up at, okay, this is the conclusion. This is what's going on.
Yeah, that's so common amongst people who deconverted.
Yeah.
Like that was true of me. Like I didn't set out to not be a Christian, and in fact,
Right.
it makes me laugh when I think back to the moment that I think my delusion kind of was broken a little bit. Was
Hmm.
I was talking to my wife about the humanity of Jesus and kind of how he may not be divine. I was kind of having this dangerous conversation, with while I was washing dishes, and then at some point she goes, "You're not a Christian anymore." Just like blurted it out, and I just
Yeah.
like stopped what I was doing and looked at her, and it was like I was in complete shock. Like, how could you even say that? That's not true.
Yeah.
So I'm with you in the sense that like I didn't, in some ways, I didn't see it coming. And I also didn't plan on that. That wasn't the goal. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what
Right.
you're saying, right?
Yeah, that totally was not the goal, but it ended up being the destination. I mean, that's where I am. Like I'm just not there. I'm not there anymore. And I love not being there. And I have to tell you, to this day, I was so my mind was so wrapped up in the idea of God. I I give myself props for being able to get out of that prison,
Yeah.
because and looking back, like I don't know how I was able to do that, because it was so ingrained. I'm telling you, like everything, it really was, and it's really
Yeah.
astonishing, that I was, able to get out of that.
Yeah. And for some of us, or many of us, it does take the hard life circumstances to make you start questioning things because your beliefs aren't matching up with reality.
Exactly right.
And I associate with that and the struggle to try to make it fit, and
Hmm.
then watching what you think is the correct path just basically crumble before you.
Hmm.
So yeah, what you said about the chain, I kind of thought of it in terms of like a chain of events. Like when you told God to F off,
Hmm.
then like it was this great release. It felt good, but then it started this chain of events or this rolling downhill, as you said, like you couldn't stop kind of the
Yeah.
repercussions of that.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
what were some of those consequences that came from that decision that were difficult?
Everyone in my circle was Christian, family, friends, acquaintances, and you just so and what I discovered was that belief and like religion, that was my connection to people. I didn't need to know who you were if I knew you were a Christian. That was fine. That was good enough for me. I didn't need to ask any questions. So now that Christian connection was broken, I had to discover who all these people were, in my circle. And they had to do the same with me because we could not connect on that level anymore because that connection was gone.
That's interesting. So it's like Christianity was a way to keep everyone kind of at a superficial level, like with each other.
Yes, it was like a web, and Christianity was the connection between each part. So now that web is gone, it's like a bunch of open spaces. Now I have to get to know you again. I have to ask you about yourself. What are your aspirations? Like, who are you? And I found that, like, for some family members, that was very difficult. And I discovered, like, I really don't know who you are. I don't. And so that's been a struggle. I mean, it's still kind of a struggle today
Yeah.
because they want to still connect on that level, but I'm unable to do that.
Did you lose any friendships or family member relationships?
I wouldn't say I lost them. I mean, they're still there,
Yeah.
but like I said, that connection isn't as the relationship is still there, of course,
But
but the
it's different
connection,
now.
yeah, the connection isn't as strong,
Yeah.
as it was before.
That makes sense. Yeah, there's people in my life that I know when I came out as an atheist that they the relationship changed,
Mm.
and that's hard. It's hard in life, when that kind of thing happens. It can be difficult, but
Yeah.
well, what do you think helped you the most through, this really difficult time in your life? This big transition.
My writing. I always wanted to be a writer. I thought I was going to write like erotic romance novels or something. That's what I saw. But the writing that I did when I was blogging, that was so helpful. Because I was really able to be truthful, especially because it wasn't public. At first I could say whatever the hell I wanted to say and just get it out there. And that's actually what my second book is, Tales from Eternity. So Tales from Eternity are most of those blog posts, and all those crazy ideas and, stuff that I was having at that time, uh, before I wrote Firing God. So Tales from Eternity is like the prequel to Firing God, right?
Okay.
But yeah, so my writing was there, and I joined a couple Facebook groups, and so those people were really supportive, and yeah, so that's about it. Like my virtual friends and my writing were very, very helpful.
What's something that you were able to learn or experience that you may not have if you had stayed Christian?
Well, my third book, Longing to Learn, that really comes from Firing God, because what I was able to do was branch outside of religion and start questioning other things. Start questioning, my role as a mother, and my role as an employee, and all of these things. So, and what I found was that the same process that broke me out of the chains of religion is the exact same process that can break me out of these other change, cultural, traditional, societal, that sort of thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to believe every single thing an authority tells me. I can question authority.
What would you call that? The thing that you said it breaks you out, the same thing that broke you out of the chains of like religion, was breaking you out of these other roles. What would you put a name to that? Or if you could put a name to that, what would you call that?
Well, I actually call that Firing God, because God, what I came to see was that God is nothing more than the beliefs I'm afraid to question.
Huh.
Anything I'm afraid to question is my God. So coming outside of religion and doing that, right, is me firing God in many aspects of my life, right, which allowed me to get this new job that I have, and it's scary now. It's very scary to do that, because these beliefs are like, that's what you're standing on. That's your flag, in the ground. That gives you direction, so you know where you are. And when you take that out, it's kind of, you're in a state of uncertainty and stuff, but it's in that state that I'm able to, just like I said, when I was going through this stuff that led me to write the book, it's in that state of openness, of willingness to learn something else, that, really amazing things can happen. And if I would have stayed Christian, I never would have experienced that, because as a Christian, I had all the answers. I didn't need to ask any more questions.
That's really amazing, because that one decision to basically in that moment just let it out and tell God to F off or whatever, like that ends up changing the rest of your life in like all these different areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it did.
Yeah, and like you said, it's like you're firing God as far as your job goes, or your roles in the relationships in your life.
Exactly.
And it kind of represents a re-examining of those foundational beliefs.
Right, and it made me unafraid to learn something else. So stuff like, I'm not hiding books anymore. My volume is up very high with things that I listen to. I'm not scared to learn something else. And as a Christian, I wouldn't even ask the question to begin the learning process, because I didn't want to jeopardize my eternal life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was so, from here, I see how stifling it was, and how much it stunted my growth, being a practicing Christian.
It's so exciting when you are in that moment where you're discovering things, you're re-examining, well, okay, well, if I question this, well, now what if I question that? And, what if it's not the way that I thought it was? What if I could live my life in a different way? And you even alluded to getting a different job. That's a really big deal in someone's life,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it is. So it's been, since then, I mean, it's been really exciting. It really, really has. And, every place I can say that, belief is not necessary, I'm gonna say that because I feel like I have good news,
Yeah.
and I want people to hear it.
How long ago was that you fired God, so to speak?
That was around 2013, 2014, something like that.
Okay.
Hmm.
So funny. Like I'll take little notes, when people are talking, and I just wrote down 2013 fired God,
Yes.
like it's like a timeline or something. But
And
it's true.
it's significant that the title. Now, first of all, as I said, I'm from Southern Louisiana, family full of ministers and stuff like that. My face is right on the book, Firing God. I was so scared to tell my mom.
Oh man.
I'm serious. Here I am, 40 years old. I'm afraid to tell my mom
Yeah.
that next week I'm publishing a book.
Oh boy, because that's a pretty edgy title.
It is.
It's
It
not
is.
like Cheryl questions her beliefs, you
I
know.
know. Right.
Wow, so she didn't know until you told her about the book.
Yeah, she didn't know. She
Wow,
had.
I had a pretty tough conversation. It was really, really hard for me with my mom. But tell me about yours. How did that go?
Well, actually, so what happened was I had a public speaking coach. His name was Robert Rabin. He lived in LA. So I went to see him because my sister lived over there at the time as well in California. So I went to his house before I went to my sister, and I was telling him about it. And he was like, Cheryl, you haven't told your mom yet? The book is published next week. And I was like, I know. So he helped me work through some stuff, and because I mean, it's my mom. And I didn't tell her that when I got pregnant the first time. I was afraid to tell her, because I wasn't married yet.
Oh, so you've gone through this before.
Yes, yeah. Like, here I go, disappointing my mom again. But
Oh,
but she was okay. I mean, she didn't like the title. She didn't like that I wrote the book. She didn't like that I was saying I don't believe this anymore. But she's my mom, and she's still we still talk every week, and I mean, all of Louisiana is praying that I'll come back to church, but
right.
but
Wow.
she's okay with it.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're in the heart of the South there. I mean, Louisiana. I mean, that's a very religious area.
Yes, extremely
But
religious.
you're super fortunate, I think. Like in terms of like most of your relationships, it sounds like the big ones that were important to you stayed intact.
Yes, we still talk. Yeah, we definitely don't talk about religion, but we still talk. You know.
Yeah. Do you find that time helps, like as time goes by?
I think it does because my sister, I think it was last month, right? So my book has been out there for like 5 years now,
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 years, and I believe it was like last month. She told me to send her a copy so she could finally read it. You know,
Wow.
because you see the title and you think you know what it's about, but it's much more than that.
And
You know,
maybe,
and I was saying the title is significant because if I'm saying I'm firing you, that means I'm the boss, right? And that's the point, is that this is a belief that I hold. Like, the belief is not the boss of me. It's the other way around.
I like
So I don't have to hold on to it if I don't want to. I can say you're fired and then have that be the truth.
I like that a lot. That's really empowering to think of it
Hmm.
that way.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like, yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that until you said it. Firing God means I'm the boss.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, you're very different today than you were, in your earlier years. Um,
Hmm.
when you think back on the Christian version of yourself, what do you think about that person now?
I think that the Christian Cheryl was an awesome person. Like, she really was. She wanted to do what she thought was the right thing to do. But she was also very afraid to do something else. or to even, wonder if there was anything else that could be done. So she was a good person, but she couldn't be as good as she could be because of the fear.
Yeah, that seems
Yeah.
to be a theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, kind of along those lines, when you go through a big transition like this, in many ways you change fundamentally, like we've been kind of talking about. But I always find that, like, when we look back at ourselves and how different we were, we can still see kind of a thread that stays the same, something positive about ourselves. What would that thing be for you? Was something positive about yourself that you feel like was always there and stayed through that transition?
I've always been like I said, I loved writing. So I've always been a creator. Like, I love creating stories. I loved creating just different ideas about things, But whereas at the beginning, I had to do that within a box. Now I'm more free to be the creative person, that I am.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, it was always there, but now you're more free to kind of express it and
Exactly.
discover it and all of that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, there are people who are listening to this podcast that are, have just recently deconverted from Christianity. And, how hard that can be. What encouragement or piece of guidance would you give that person who's listening right now?
I would say that, if you've gotten to this point, then you're really good. I mean, you're very strong and you're very courageous, because willingness to question what is right, is something that takes a lot of courage. It really, really does. So, for those who are newly converted, like, I admire and commend you, for what you've done so far, and to just keep going. Keep going.
Is there anything that we haven't discussed as we kind of wrap things up that you wanted to mention?
No, I think your questions are awesome. Like, it's wonderful.
Or even, about your story, or even about, like, one of your books. I know we've kind of touched on them a little bit, but.
Yeah, so Firing God is really the main book, and everything I've done after that is from Firing God, from those same principles and concepts. So my most recent book is called Longing to Learn, and that's what my profession is. I'm in the learning and development and evaluation profession. So. Which is amazing to me. I mean, I absolutely love it, because learning is the thing that really got me where I am, right? Being open to learn and open to do something so that I could learn from it and then, get to that next step. So, so those are the three books, and Tales from Eternity is the other one, and they're all on Amazon.
Okay.
So if anyone is interested in reading it, I also have a website, CherylAbram.com.
Okay, and what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, they can email me, Epiphany, it's YPIFANY @gmail.com, or you can just go to my website, CherylAbram.com, and contact me there.
Okay, great. Well, Cheryl, it has been a pleasure meeting you and hearing your story. You said some things that were just so awesome that I hadn't heard yet. In all these interviews I've done, just some different points that you made that I just thought were so good. And as you explained what Firing God meant, I really liked that. I think that, I don't know, it was just a great concept.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for sharing your story and talking about your experience today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Thanks for listening to Voices of Deconversion. Be sure to join us next time by subscribing to the podcast. If you'd like to learn more, check out our newsletter at bodpodcast.com.